The CEO looked at the single dad standing in front of her and laughed. You're telling me this is your entire proposal? Daniel Carter stood beside the polished conference table, holding a folder he had spent 3 weeks preparing. Yes, ma'am. Victoria Sterling, CEO of Sterling Industries, flipped through the first few pages without really reading them. Then she looked at him. His jacket was old. His shoes were worn. His hands had small scars across the knuckles. There was grease beneath one fingernail that he hadn't managed to scrub away. Victoria raised an eyebrow. You came here dressed like that? Daniel glanced down at himself. I came straight from the workshop. That much is obvious. A few executives around the table chuckled. Daniel heard them. He had learned to ignore laughter. Being a single father had taught him that pride didn't put food on the table. Pride didn't pay school fees. Pride didn't keep the electricity on. Work did. And Daniel had worked almost every day for the last 8 years. His daughter, Lily, was 8 years old. Her mother had died when Lily was only 3. Since then, Daniel had become everything to her. Father, cook, driver, homework helper, emergency contact. And sometimes, when Lily had nightmares, the person who sat beside her bed until sunrise. He worked 2 jobs to keep their lives together. During the day, he repaired industrial equipment. At night, he worked on smaller machines from his garage. He didn't have a fancy office. He didn't have employees in suits. But he knew machines. That was why Sterling Industries had invited him. Their historic manufacturing plant had been suffering repeated mechanical failures. 3 engineering firms had inspected the equipment. 2 had recommended replacing nearly everything. The projected cost was more than $1.8 million. Daniel believed they were wrong. He had spent weeks studying the old machinery. He had examined archived manuals. He had spoken with retired technicians. And he had discovered something no one else had noticed. The machines weren't dying. Someone had changed the pressure system decades ago. That modification was causing the repeated failures. Fixing it would cost less than $400,000. But Victoria didn't know any of that. She only saw a poor man standing in her boardroom. You expect my company to trust you with a multi-million-dollar facility? She asked. Daniel nodded. I understand the concern. You don't exactly look like someone who handles multi-million-dollar projects. My clothes don't affect my work. Victoria smiled. Presentation matters. Daniel looked around the room. Every executive wore an expensive suit. Every chair probably cost more than his monthly rent. He knew exactly what they thought. He's just a mechanic. He opened the folder. If you give me 48 hours inside the facility, I can prove my assessment. Victoria glanced at the proposal. You're charging less than half of what our other contractors quoted. Yes. Why? Because most of the parts don't need replacing. Victoria leaned back. Are you saying our engineers are incompetent? No. Daniel pointed to a diagram. I'm saying they were looking at the wrong problem. One of the senior engineers leaned forward. What makes you think that? Daniel turned toward him. The pressure readings. The engineer frowned. Daniel continued. They're inconsistent with the original specifications. Someone modified the relief system years ago. Victoria looked at the diagram. And you discovered this from what? Old maintenance records. You had access to those? No. Victoria stared at him. Then how did you know? Daniel hesitated. My father taught me. Victoria's expression changed slightly. Your father? He owned a repair shop. What does that have to do with our factory? He worked in factories like yours. Daniel opened another page. This equipment uses an older design. Most modern technicians don't recognize the failure pattern because the original system hasn't been manufactured in decades. The senior engineer studied the drawing. That could explain the pressure spikes. Victoria turned toward him. Could it? Yes. Daniel continued. If I'm right, replacing the equipment would be a massive waste of money. Victoria closed the folder. And if you're wrong, then you lose 48 hours. And if you're right, you save over $1 million. Silence filled the room. Victoria looked at him carefully. For a moment, Daniel thought she might actually listen. Then she noticed the worn watch on his wrist. Why are you doing this? Because it's my job. No. I mean, why come here? You clearly don't operate on the same level as this company. Daniel's expression tightened. I wasn't aware there was a level. Victoria gave a small laugh. Mr. Carter, you have a small repair business. Yes. You have no large corporate clients. Not yet. You're a single father. Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly. Yes. And you're asking me to trust you with equipment worth millions. Yes. Victoria shook her head. You're incredibly confident. Daniel looked at her. I'm confident in my work. And if I reject you, I go home. To your daughter? Yes. Does she know you're here? Daniel smiled faintly. She thinks I'm fixing something important. Victoria laughed. She sounds optimistic. She is. Daniel closed the folder. I don't need this contract. Victoria raised an eyebrow. You don't. I need work. There's a difference. That answer caught the room off guard. Daniel stood. I came here because I thought I could solve your problem. He picked up the folder. If you don't want my help, that's fine. Victoria watched him walk toward the door. Then she said, Mr. Carter. He stopped. You should be grateful you were invited into this room. Daniel slowly turned around. Victoria continued. People like you don't usually get opportunities like this. The room became silent. Daniel looked at her. People like me? Victoria realized how the words sounded. But pride prevented her from taking them back. Yes. Daniel nodded slowly. I understand. He walked back toward the table. For a moment, Victoria thought he might apologize. Instead, he placed the folder in front of her. You're right about one thing. What? I shouldn't be in this room. Victoria smiled. I'm glad you understand. Daniel shook his head. Not because I'm beneath you. Her smile disappeared. I shouldn't be here because you already decided who I was before you looked at my work. Nobody spoke. Daniel picked up his coat. You don't need my proposal. He walked toward the door. You need someone who makes you feel important. Victoria stared after him. He opened the door. Then he stopped. My daughter is waiting for me. He looked back one final time. She doesn't care how much money someone has. Then he left. The door closed. For several seconds, nobody moved. Victoria looked down at the proposal. One of her executives cleared his throat. Ma'am. What? I think we should review his numbers. Victoria frowned. Why? The calculations are good. How good? The engineer picked up the pages. Very good. Victoria said nothing. The engineer continued. If he's right about the pressure system, we've been preparing to spend nearly $2 million fixing something that could probably be repaired for less than $400,000. Victoria's jaw tightened. Then bring him back. The executive hesitated. He left. Call him. We tried. And he won't answer. Victoria looked toward the door. For the first time, she felt uncomfortable. Not because Daniel had challenged her. Because she knew she had humiliated someone who might have been exactly what her company needed. But that wasn't what bothered her most. It was the strange feeling she had experienced when he mentioned his father. Something about the way he spoke. Something about his eyes. She couldn't explain it. The next morning, Victoria arrived at the office early. Her assistant placed a stack of archival photographs on her desk. Ms. Sterling, these were found in storage. Victoria barely looked up. Put them with the other historical records. The assistant nodded. As she turned to leave, one photograph slipped from the stack. It landed on Victoria's desk. She glanced at it and froze. The photograph was nearly 25 years old. It showed her father standing outside Sterling Industries' old factory. Beside him stood a young mechanic. Victoria stared at the mechanic. She knew that face. Not from yesterday. From somewhere much deeper. Then she noticed the little girl standing beside him. A little girl with two braids, a yellow dress, and a frightened expression. Victoria's breath caught. She picked up the photograph. She was the little girl. She had been 8 years old, and the young mechanic holding her hand was Daniel's father. Victoria stared at the photograph until the words on the documents in front of her became meaningless. She remembered that day. Not everything. Just pieces. The smell of oil. The enormous machines. Her father's deep voice telling her to stay close. Then getting distracted. A loud metallic bang. Panic. She had wandered away from the visitors area and ended up near one of the old machines. She remembered crying. She remembered thinking her father would never find her. Then a young mechanic had appeared. He had crouched down beside her instead of shouting. What's your name? Victoria. Are you lost? She had nodded. He smiled. Don't worry. Your father is looking for you. What if he can't find me? He will. How do you know? The young man had picked up a tiny metal gear from the floor. Because everything has a way of finding its way back where it belongs. She had held the gear tightly. Then he had stayed beside her until her father arrived. Victoria remembered her father running toward them. She remembered him hugging her. She remembered the young mechanic stepping back. And she remembered her father shaking his hand. Thank you, David. The name hit her now. David Carter. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. She looked at the photograph again. Then at the folder Daniel had left behind. Daniel Carter, the son of the man who had once saved her. She whispered. No. Her assistant entered. Miss Sterling? Victoria looked up. Where did you find this? In the old archive room. Who identified these people? There was a label on the back. Victoria turned the photograph over. The handwriting was her father's. Victoria, age 8, with David Carter, 2001. Her hands trembled. Her assistant looked confused. Is something wrong? Victoria stood. Find Daniel Carter. We tried calling him. Call again. He isn't answering. Then find another way. The assistant hesitated. Why? Victoria looked at the photograph. Because I owe his family an apology. Meanwhile, Daniel was back at his workshop. He had spent the morning repairing a delivery truck. His phone had buzzed several times. Sterling Industries. He ignored it. He wasn't interested anymore. He had already learned what Victoria thought of him. His daughter Lily sat on an old stool nearby doing her homework. Dad. Yes. Why are you angry? Daniel stopped working. I'm not angry. You're hitting that wrench harder than usual. He smiled. Maybe the wrench deserves it. Lily laughed. Then she looked at him seriously. Did the rich lady say something mean? Daniel wiped his hands. She was rude. Why? Because sometimes people judge others before they know them. Lily frowned. That's not nice. No. Did you tell her? I did. Lily smiled. Good. Daniel looked at his daughter. She had his stubbornness. But she also had her mother's kindness. He crouched beside her. Never let someone make you feel small because they have more money than you. Lily nodded. Okay. His phone rang again. He looked at the screen. Victoria Sterling. He declined it. Lily noticed. Was that the rich lady? Yes. Maybe she's calling to say sorry. Daniel laughed. I doubt it. But 10 minutes later, a black company car pulled into the workshop. Daniel frowned. Victoria stepped out.